Hello, class. How are we doing today? Today's an exciting day because we get to talk about the Declaration of Independence, where the United States really began its small new nation, separating from the greatest empire in the world at the time, the British Empire. And so the Declaration of Independence is this document that is written to, what it says, declare independence from Great Britain and become its own nation. The colonists were fed up for a lot of reasons, which we talked about earlier, and also it is in your reading, but they were fed up with taxes, they were fed up with unfair trials, and not allowing them to go west of the Appalachian Mountains, and soldiers in the home, and I can go on and on and on. They were frustrated, and so they had to write a document to show that frustration, and that's a Declaration of Independence. And it's really broken down similar to an essay into three parts. Part one is a description of political thought. In other words, it describes what a government should be. It talks about the government should be of the people, in that if the people feel like their rights are being abused, they have the right to stand up, revolt, and abolish it and establish a new form of government. A government should be something that's protecting life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. So it's all about what the best form of government would be. If you watch the breakup letter, that's kind of what it goes along with. That girl told me, hey, this is what a relationship should be, and now this is what we're talking about here in the first part of the Declaration. And so the second part is to kind of show how the king is not doing what they're describing, that Jefferson's describing as the best type of government. And so he has a list of complaints against the king. And this is basically a bullet point list, making it very clear exactly what he did wrong. Soldiers in our home, unfair trials, waiting too long to get a trial, unfair taxes, no representation in Parliament, governors that are from other places and not living amongst them. And the list can go on, and it's just a list of complaints of what the king exactly did wrong. And then in the third part of the Declaration, it's the breakup. It's officially declaring independence from the British Empire. It's letting people know, it's letting the rest of the world know that this colony is no longer part of the British Empire. And that kind of leads us to our next part of, if you're going to write an article or you're going to write a paper, you should be thinking of an audience. And so who's the main audience for Jefferson as he writes the Declaration of Independence? So think about that. Who would you want to know? All right, so the first main one is actually going to be foreign countries. And the main reason for this is they need support to win this war. All right, so they write this in a way that maybe the king in France is sitting there thinking, wow, this king in Great Britain, I don't like him anyway, but he is really mistreating the colonists. All right, so they're trying to gain support and justify their declaration, and not just looking like a bunch of rebels, but rather a group that has been abused and deserves the opportunity to become their own country. And obviously they want to write it to the king, although they have written enough to the king at this point, and he has refused to listen. And so now you're really trying to gain the support of foreign countries and the colonists. So just a quick check here. You maybe could pause your video and just see if you know these things. You should be able to know these things for this topic in order to be successful. These are also questions that you'll see in your key concepts. But if you have any questions about these here, please let me know. Now we're going to move on to this idea of principles, constitutional principles. What principles do we live by as an individual, and then what principles do we live by as a country? And so I want you to think about that a minute. What are some things that you value about yourself? Something that you're going to be unwavering about. Is that going to be honesty? Is that going to be your religion, your faith? Some people, maybe it's their politics. So what are some things that you live by? And when we're thinking about the Constitution that's going to come up soon, as well as the Declaration of Independence, there should be principles in it, something that is, again, justifiable for leaving the British Empire, but also a guidance to creating this new government that these colonists have to that these colonists have to do in order to become a successful nation for a long-standing time. So what principles do we live by? The first one is limited government. What is limited government? This is the idea that a government may only do those things that the people have given it the power to do. Right? So the government can't just do whatever it wants. They're limited. And our Constitution is a statement of limited government as we get to that. And the Declaration of Independence talks about that as well by listing all the things that the king was doing that were kind of unlimited government. And so only the people can give the government the power to do something. And we do that through voting, and that's how we limit our government. Also through things like checks and balances, separation of powers, which we'll get to soon. So separation of powers, something in our Constitution, and something that we talked about, I think, in topic 1.1. This is the idea that we have three branches of government. The legislative branch is Article 1, executive branch, that's Article 2, and the judicial branch, which is the court system, in Article 3. And each of these branches is separate from the other. You cannot serve in more than one branch at a time. You cannot you can only do what your powers are, like what you have been given to do. Congress can declare war. It's not the president who declares war. The judicial branch is a job to interpret a law. So it's not really the president to say a law is unconstitutional. The judicial branch, the Supreme Court, will eventually do that. Now, they all do interact in some ways, as far as like the lawmaking process is the legislative branch, but it needs to be passed by the executive branch, and that's going to kind of bring us into the idea of checks and balances here in a few minutes. But first, I want to talk about natural rights. Natural rights are something that we're born with, like life, liberty, and property. You should know that. Life, liberty, and property. That no matter what, at birth, every human is given these natural rights. And we get this theory from John Locke. Thomas Hobbes talks about it. And it's something that is in our Declaration of Independence. And how does the idea of limiting government itself? Well, the government cannot do anything to harm these natural rights of life, liberty, and property. Popular sovereignty. The word sovereignty itself is like an all being, a strength, that there's no greater power. Like you may have heard of the all sovereign God before, that there's no higher power in the universe. And so popular sovereignty, this word popular, it comes to do with people, that all political power derives in the people. So all the political power, the decisions made, begins with the people. So in the United States, sovereignty comes from the people. In some places, like North Korea, a sovereignty might come in a supreme leader, or under the British Empire and the king, it might become under, the king. So we vote for representatives and then we give our consent to be governed by these representatives, but ultimately we're the ones that start it by voting. And so our sovereignty as a nation comes from us as the people. Republicanism is the idea that power of the government is held by the people. The people give the power to leaders they elect to represent them and serve their interests. So we go to the voting booth, we vote. We vote for people who are going to represent our views. Once they go into Congress, they represent our views. They should vote on things that we believe in, or that the majority of the people that in their district believe in. We'll get more into that in later units. Social contract, talked about this already, but this is that people give up some rights in order to have their rights protected. We go slower in a car. And if you're going down Hunsberger at 35 miles per hour, you're following the speed limit. But we don't go 90 because we would harm somebody else, all right? So we give up some rights to do whatever you want in order to have some rights protected. All right, so checks and balances. If you get a minute, check this video out. It'll do a good job of describing checks and balances. But the three branches are not entirely separated nor completely independent of one another. So basically, an example of this is even though the legislative branch might make laws, Congress makes laws, that law can be ruled unconstitutional by the judicial branch. And on the flip side, the executive branch is who enforces the law, so they can enforce the law in a variety of ways, which is directed often by the president or the department heads, again, which we'll talk to more in future units. Federalism is a system of government in which power is divided between the national and the state government. So if you think about it like this, there's some powers that are for the states, some for the national government. The Constitution states this. When we look at the 10th Amendment, anything not in the Constitution is left up to the states. So things like wearing a mask, it's not in the Constitution. So states, have put in their own things. We talk about policing, police forces. There's not a federal police force. It is local governments and state governments that has their own police force. Why? Because it's not in the Constitution. So there's just balanced power, and that's the idea of federalism. So there's this worksheet that should be on your Canvas that you should try to complete. And really, I want you to just kind of think about this. Is your confidence level with it? Sun's coming up tomorrow. Great, you're doing awesome. You're saying there's a chance you might have some questions. Well, then ask them. Or if you feel like the Lions will win a playoff game, which hasn't happened in my lifetime, and I'm sure none of your lifetimes, obviously. So that's like you don't understand this at all. And if you're in this red box after going through this statement, please shoot me an email or a comment and or talk to me in class when we're here, and let's get you caught up. All right. So you just let me know, and that's pretty much it today. Here's just a quick look for this is what the assignment should look like. You should see it in your Canvas. All right. We'll talk to you all soon.